No update on Caitlin, but the fight continues. Stephanie White walked into the pregame media room with no breaking news on Caitlin's injury status, just a quiet honesty. "I don't have an update. She saw another doctor this morning," she admitted, explaining that Caitlin had traveled with the team to New York. For now, the mystery lingers. All-Star Weekend. The heart of the WNBA. When the conversation turned to All-Star Weekend, White's voice lit up. She painted a picture of Indianapolis as the epicenter of women's basketball, streets wrapped in WNBA signage, community activations humming with energy, and Pacers sports and entertainment pulling off a masterclass in event hosting. "Top-notch," she said with pride. "It felt like the entire sports world stopped to watch us." A league evolving before our eyes. White's tenure in the league has given her a front-row seat to the evolution of the All-Star game, once just an exhibition, now a tentpole celebration. She admitted she'd love a bit more competitive fire in the actual game, but stressed the deeper meaning. "It's a time to remember we're all in this together. To celebrate each other before we fight again in the second half." Resilience. Born in the fire. When asked about her players crediting their resilience to her, White didn't hesitate to redirect the praise. "I learned from them," she insisted. "This team has endured injuries, lineup shuffles, and gut punch setbacks, and yet, no one plays the victim. They've handled it with grace, humility, and fight," she said. "The trials have forged opportunity, giving players unexpected minutes and experience. But White is clear, I'm ready to see fewer setbacks in the second half." A defensive reality check, and then came the gut punch. Right before the break, the Fever's defense slipped below the gold standard mark, less than 1 point allowed per possession. For a team priding itself on grit, that's a siren. White knows it. The second half of the season isn't just about getting healthy. It's about tightening the screws and proving that resilience translates into stops. It was almost a throwaway stat in the grand flow of the conversation, but it hit like a jolt of cold water. Right before the final game of the first half of the season, the Fever's defense had dipped below a symbolic threshold, less than 1 point allowed per possession. In the cold world of analytics, that number is a warning flare. It's the difference between a defense that bends without breaking and one that can't hold when the game is on the line. For a team that has built its identity around grit, fight, and never backing down, the drop was more than a statistic. It was a challenge to everything they've been trying to become. Stephanie White didn't shy away from it. She didn't try to spin it. She's been in the league too long to pretend numbers don't matter, but she's also been around long enough to know numbers never tell the whole story. "In this league, there's no such thing as breathing room," she said, leaning forward in her seat. "Every possession is a fight. Every defensive stand is an opportunity, or a mistake, that can change the game." This is not the first time the Fever have stared down adversity this season. Injuries have pulled the rug out from under promising rotations. Lineups that finally start clicking have been scrambled overnight. Defensive schemes have been forced to adapt on the fly, sometimes mid-game, with players taking on roles they hadn't prepared for in training camp. And yet, there's a dual truth at play. On one hand, White sees the very resilience she talks about, the ability to regroup, recalibrate, and get back to work no matter how many hits they take. On the other, she knows that resilience without execution is just survival. The Fever don't just want to survive, they want to win. The weight of the number dropping below that 1 point per possession mark doesn't just mean opponents are finding ways to score. It signals cracks in the defensive backbone. It's the kind of metric coaches study not just for what it says, but for what it predicts. Basketball insiders know that elite teams, the ones playing deep into the postseason, live above that line. A sub-1 point per possession defense isn't just about pride. It's about being built to withstand the playoff grind. Falling short of it means you're in a danger zone, where late-game leads vanish and momentum shifts become irreversible. White isn't sounding an alarm for panic's sake. She's sounding it because she knows this team's potential, and she refuses to let potential be wasted. "We've been chipping away all year," she said. "But now we have to tighten. No more giving up easy looks. No more second-chance points we can control. It's time to put our stamp on every defensive possession." From resilience to ruthlessness, resilience has been the season's calling card, but the second half demands something different: ruthlessness. White wants her team to fight for every inch, to make every cut contested, every screen painful, every shot uncomfortable. That's the standard she believes will not only get them back above the line, but keep them there when it matters most. This means hard conversations in film sessions. It means holding each other accountable in ways that aren't always comfortable. It means veterans showing rookies not just where to be, but how to carry themselves when the scoreboard is tight and the clock is bleeding out. White's voice sharpens when she talks about this. Not in frustration, in conviction. The second half of the season is where you define who you are, she said. You can say you're a defensive team, but if you don't do it possession after possession, it's just words. And words don't win games. The challenge ahead: the Fever enter the second half, knowing the road won't get easier. Opponents are healthier, rotations are settled, and playoff pushes are in full swing. That means no one is going to take it easy on a team still trying to find its consistent identity. But White doesn't just see this as pressure, she sees it as the perfect stage. Because the same resilience that kept them afloat in the first half can become the steel in their spine now. The same players who had to adapt to injuries can now use that experience to sharpen their defensive instincts. And the same group that's been told, not yet by the standings, can decide, together, that the second half will be different. If they succeed, the story of the Fever season won't be about the dip below that defensive threshold. It will be about how they climbed back, locked in, and refused to let go. And if they do that, White won't need to point to the numbers at all. The wins will speak for themselves, setting the tone or getting left behind. Stephanie White's midseason truth bomb. The question was about numbers, defensive numbers, but the answer told a much bigger story. Since the 2015 Indiana Fever, a year Stephanie White knows better than anyone, the franchise hasn't been in the conversation for elite defensive efficiency. And yet, right before the All-Star break, something unusual happened. The Fever found themselves hovering around a mark that meant something. The stat on the table: defensive efficiency. For most fans, it's just a column in a box score or a bullet point in an analyst's graphic. But to a coach like White, it's a barometer of who you are when the game stops being pretty and becomes a grind. Yes, I'm proud of that, she said, voice steady but deliberate. Back in May, we were in the upper half defensively, then we hit a little skid in June. We started trending upward again, but right before the break, another slip. Maybe the last 7 to 10 days before All-Star, I could feel it. That slip wasn't just bad luck. It was the kind of slippage coaches hate most, the slow erosion of habits. The little cracks that show up when you don't have time to practice, when game after game blurs into travel, media, and treatment tables. White wasn't sugarcoating it. We stopped disrupting offenses the way we had been. That's on us. She knows this team isn't going to vault from the bottom to the top overnight. But the target is clear. Middle of the pack, or better. That's where you give yourself a fighting chance every single night, no matter the opponent. And then came the sting of truth. It's not just about hitting the number once. Now it's about doing it consistently. Game over game. No matter who's in front of us. Better opponents will exploit every single gap. You've got to adjust fast, and you've got to know exactly what you're willing to give up and live with it. Balancing legs, minds, and urgency. White's balancing act didn't stop with defensive metrics. The All-Star break, meant to recharge bodies, can also rob a team of rhythm. The New York Liberty's Sandy Brondello had already told reporters she was giving Breanna Stewart and Sabrina Ionescu extra rest after a jam-packed All-Star schedule. White's players. They'd been busy too, not just on the court, but hosting. Indiana was the center of the WNBA world for the weekend, and her roster was everywhere. So how do you walk the tightrope between rest and readiness? White explained it like a chess match. Non-All-Stars were in the gym on Sunday, working, but not draining the tank. Everyone else came back Monday. The goal? Avoid the sluggish fog that always seems to follow too many off days. It's a balance, she admitted. Sometimes we nail it, sometimes we don't. But we knew we had work to do, and thankfully we were home. No Sunday or Monday travel, so we could use those days to sharpen instead of just recover. The age factor plays in too. Aaliyah Boston is young enough to bounce back in a blink. Kelsey Mitchell is right in the mid-career sweet spot. The bodies can handle the load. But the mindset? That's where White's focus stays locked. The brutal reality of the second half, the WNBA isn't handing out warm-up games after the break. White's Fever open against two of the last three league champions, then face the most improved team in Phoenix and a dangerous Chicago squad. This isn't a work-your-way-back schedule, it's a pressure cooker. It's really important for us to come back and set the tone, White said, her voice almost daring anyone to miss the point. We need to recognize where we are in the season and the urgency that demands of us every single possession. It's not just urgency in the abstract, it's laser focus on what's in front of you right now. The Fever can't beat New York next month tonight. They can only beat the Liberty tonight. And for White, that's enough to build on. Our attention to detail has to be better than the last time we played them. We've had a couple of good practice days, and we respond when we can get that work in. The Sid Colson experience. Laughter in the fire, and then, because basketball is never just basketball, the press conference took a turn. Someone brought up Sid Colson's comedy show. White's face cracked into a smile. I love how you called it the Sid Colson experience, she laughed. White had been there. She'd watched her player, in front of an audience, under the lights, turn the quick wit and timing she shows in the locker room into a full performance. She was amazing, White said without hesitation. We see it every day. There's comedic relief, there's improvisation, and it's always perfectly timed. But here's where White's perspective deepened. To her, this isn't just personality. It's leadership. The kind that sneaks into tense moments and breaks them just enough for everyone to breathe again. It's part of her leadership style. And it matters. A lot. In a season that's tells.